You know, they used to call The Tonight Show America's living room. Every night, Johnny Carson would walk out, adjust his tie, flash that smile, and suddenly, the world felt safe again. But let you in on a little secret that the cameras missed. That living room? Sometimes it felt more like a minefield. For 30 years, Johnny sat in that chair, staring down the most powerful people in Hollywood. Some were friends, some were legends, and sometimes they said things that made the entire studio freeze. The air would go cold, the audience would hold its breath. And Johnny? He had to play the peacemaker while sweating through his suit. Today, let's pull back the velvet curtain. Forget the glamour for a second. Look at Johnny's eyes when he faced his 7 most impossible guests. Because behind that $1 million laugh was a high-stakes poker game that most of us never even noticed. Let's start with Don Rickles. If you never saw him live, picture this. The guy was like a live grenade rolled into a dinner party. He insulted everyone. Black, white, Jewish, Asian, nobody was safe. But here's the weird part. Why did Johnny, a man obsessed with controlling his image, let Rickles get away with murder on his stage? Simple. Because they were brothers. You had to be there to understand the vibe. Johnny loved Don. He would crack up, slamming his hand on the desk every time Don roasted someone. But look a little closer. While Johnny the friend was laughing, Johnny the boss was panicking. There's a story the crew used to whisper about backstage. Whenever Rickles walked out, Johnny had a standing order with the director. If he crosses the line, cut to commercial immediately. People defend Rickles by saying he was an equal opportunity offender, that he hated everyone equally. But let's be real for a second. That was just an excuse. When Don mocked a powerful white guy, it was personal. But when he turned on a minority guest, it was lazy. It was stereotypes. Did Johnny know that? Of course he did. But because of their friendship, he looked the other way. And that's the dirty little secret of show business. Sometimes, the person most likely to ruin your reputation is your very best friend. Next up, we have Burt Reynolds. Man, in the 70s, you couldn't touch him. He was the coolest guy in the room. That laugh, that mustache, that southern charm. He was the guy every man wanted to be and every woman wanted to be with. But here's the thing about that good old boy charm. Sometimes it came with some old school baggage. Burt was from the deep South, and every now and then, that background would slip out in the ugliest ways. I remember this one night in 1978. Burt thought he was just being funny, cracking jokes about Native Americans. But in the studio, you could feel the air get heavy. It wasn't funny. It was mean. Now, Johnny didn't confront him. That wasn't Johnny's style. He didn't want to embarrass the biggest movie star in the world on live TV. But he did something else. Quietly, without making a scene, Johnny gave an order to the archives. Pull that tape. He made sure that specific interview was scrubbed from the reruns. It was Johnny's way of saying, I like you, Burt, but we're not airing that trash again. It was the silent delete button. Then there was the Duke, John Wayne. When he walked onto the set, he took up all the oxygen. For years, he and Johnny had this great rapport, 2 titans of American entertainment. But everything changed in 1971. That Playboy interview came out where Wayne basically said he believed in white supremacy. It was brutal. After that, the vibe on set shifted completely. I'm telling you, you could feel the temperature drop 10 degrees when Wayne walked out. Johnny was a pro, so he was polite. He shook his hand. He asked the questions. But look at the footage from those later years. The warmth was gone. The eyes were flat. It wasn't a chat between friends anymore. It was a business transaction. Johnny knew he was sitting across from a legend, but he also knew that legend stood for something he couldn't stomach. It was the most polite cold shoulder in television history. Now, Buddy Hackett. He was a different kind of problem. Buddy was loud, chaotic, and refused to grow up. And I don't mean that in a good way. The world was changing fast in the 70s, but Buddy, he was stuck in a 1940s nightclub. He kept doing these accents, these offensive stereotypes, thinking they were still hilarious. Most guests, if they bombed, they'd adjust. Not Buddy. He got stubborn. He acted like the world was wrong and he was right. It got so bad that Johnny, who almost never interfered with a guest's material, had to put his foot down. There was a rumor that after one particularly bad routine, Johnny walked off set and told the producers, "He is never doing that bit on my show again." It was rare to see Johnny play the dad card, but with Buddy, he had no choice. The guy just wouldn't read the room. Charlton Heston. The man played Moses, for crying out loud. He had this booming voice and this aura of dignity, but backstage, he was becoming a headache. As he got older, Heston got political, really political, and his views on race and civil rights were, let's just say, they were out of touch. He'd go on rants about how civil rights activists were just complaining too much. So, how do you handle Moses without starting a fight? You distract him. We had a strategy with Heston. Johnny's instructions to the writers were clear. Keep it light. Ask him about Ben-Hur. Ask him about the chariots. Ask him about anything except politics. It was a game of keep away. We weren't interviewing him. We were managing him. We were trying to get the movie star without letting the angry political activist take over the microphone. This one hurts. Red Skelton was Johnny's hero. Johnny grew up worshiping this guy. But seeing Red in the later years was like watching your favorite uncle get too drunk at a wedding. He was from the vaudeville era where blackface was normal, and he just couldn't understand why people were upset about it now. He would sit there and complain about censorship and how people were too sensitive. And the worst part? The silence. Johnny wouldn't argue with him. He couldn't. He respected him too much. So he would just sit there, with this sad look in his eyes, quickly changing the subject while the audience sat on their hands. It wasn't anger, it was pity. Watching a legend realize, live on air, that the world had moved on without him. Finally, we have the big one. Bob Hope. You couldn't touch Bob Hope. He was an American institution, but man, was he stubborn. Even in the 80s, Bob was still cracking jokes about race that sounded like they were from 1950. He thought because he entertained the troops, he had a free pass. Johnny couldn't ban him. You don't ban Bob Hope. So Johnny developed a tell. Watched the tapes. When Bob told a bad joke, a racist one, Johnny wouldn't give him the real laugh. He'd give him the tight smile. Lips pressed together, a little nod, and an immediate subject change. That smile was Johnny's way of saying to the audience, I know, folks, I know. Let's just get through this. It was the only weapon he had against a guy who was too big to fail. So, what do we learn when we look back at these tapes? We see that The Tonight Show wasn't just jokes and celebrities, it was a mirror. And sometimes mirrors show you ugly things. Johnny Carson wasn't a saint. He didn't flip tables or kick these guys out. He was a man of his time, trying to keep the show on the road while the pavement was cracking beneath him. He used silence. He used distraction. and he used that famous tight smile to navigate a minefield of egos and prejudice. Looking back now, those awkward moments tell us more about American history than the jokes ever did. They remind us that even in the good old days, the laughter sometimes came at a cost. The world was changing fast in the 70s, but Buddy, he was stuck in a 1940s nightclub. He kept doing these accents, these offensive stereotypes, thinking they were still hilarious. Most guests, if they bombed, they'd adjust. Not Buddy. He got stubborn. He acted like the world was wrong, and he was right. It got so bad that Johnny, who almost never interfered with a guest's material, had to put his foot down. There was a rumor that after one particularly bad routine, Johnny walked off set and told the producers, "He is never doing that bit on my show again." It was rare to see Johnny play the dad card, but with Bud,